Well, happy October makers. This is the Halloween journal that I made with the Etc. number 8 thickboard tombstone from Stampers Anonymous and Tim Holtz. And I wanted to make it into a journal, so I pulled a tag from the pack of number 8 etc. tags. And then I also am going to be using a pack of the Distress number 8 tags, the mixed media tags. So that's going to be the base and the cover of my journal. And then I just pulled a bunch of things that I want to use, and one of those is this is my one of my favorite stencils. So I'm going to be using this stencil on the cover of the tombstone and then the back cover using some translucent crackle paste. And so the difference between the translucent crackle paste and the opaque is that this will dry and it will be somewhat see-through, and I want to be able to see the brown from the etc. tags, and then Leota's joining us, and then I'm going to be covering that with some black soot distress paint. Now, I went through and I just pulled all of these new mixed media sets that were part of the Halloween curations. And so I'm going to be using all of these. And I'm not assuming that you are going to have all of these. Maybe you went ahead and, bought all of them. But because they were available in the curation, I went ahead and I used all of them in today's journal that I'm going to be showing you, as well as the stencils from the curation and many of the red rubber sets. So just kind of going through showing you the ones that I pulled from the curation set. And for this one I pulled the smaller versions of a lot of these, and instead of the larger ones, because I thought the smaller images would go better on the tags on the inside. So I used all of those, as well as I used some of the little components, ATC sized, to make some pockets. So just use what you have. Obviously, you probably have other Halloween stamps and things like that. I just wanted to use the things from the curation since that was my design assignment. So, um, we're going to begin by pulling one of the etc. number 8 tags out of the pack of, I think you get 5 in a pack. And then the tombstone comes with one of the number 8 tags, and then these overlay pieces. So you just pop them out of the thick board piece that they are cut out of. And so that top part, you can either use that outline piece or the inside pop out on the top if you'd like. And then the bottom has 2 pieces that go like that. And then save the pop out piece, because we're going to be cutting pieces apart to go under that top piece so that I can put a binder ring through, and I need those to kind of pop that top piece up so that we have room to put the binder. So let's go ahead and get started with the crackle paste. So to know on the front where I wanted the crackle paste, I put the largest bottom piece and drew a line, and then I put the top on and drew a line. And then that shows me, since I'm going to be attaching it there, I don't want to have crackle paste below or behind both of those pieces. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the crackle paste through the stencil on that center portion between the 2 pencil lines. And you don't have to be perfect about this. I did speed this up, but I still did this very quickly in real time. So it can, not be exactly perfect edge to edge, and you can miss some spots here and there to make it kind of look a little bit like a worn tapestry. And on the back of it, I did cover the whole thing because I'm not going to have any overlays on the back. But you can see that I left some spots where I don't have any to make it look worn. And then I did want to put it on the top part of the overlay so that there was some texture on the cross and then on that top area. For the inside of the journal, I'm going to use these mixed media distress tags. And so I sprayed one side with just water from my distress sprayer. And then I'm flipping them all over and I'm going to spray the other side with just water from my distress sprayer. And you're going to see that they're going to start to flatten out. Now I want to add a little color, so I am spraying them with Old Paper Distress Spray Stain. And then I'm going to add a little bit of pumice stone by taking the sprayer out and just flicking some of that pumice stone across the tags and then spraying them with water. And I did that on both sides, and so I'm kind of showing you how both sides have some of that greenish, it's kind of a light green old paper, and then that pumice stone. Making the tags gave the texture paste a chance to dry, and you can see that now it is translucent. So it is showing through that brown of the uh, thick board tags to show through, and that's what I am hoping is going to happen. All except for that little spot down there, it's translucent. I did not put any texture paste on the top or the bottom pieces. I'm going to paint everything with the black soot distress paint and hope that this uh, Crackle paste will resist it, and then on all the spaces where I have that the brown will show through the Crackle paste, and you'll be able to see that wonderful crackled texture, but also see the beautiful design, tapestry design that's on there. So that's the plan. So let's get started painting. Now, before I actually start with the paint, I do need to have something to clean up with, and these crafty cleanup cloths from scrapbook.com are my favorite right now. So I'm going to link them below because they come on a roll and you just pull them off like a paper towel, and I love them. The other thing I use often are these water wipes. They're 99.9% water. They don't have other stuff in them. And so I find them great for just cleaning up really quick messes. And so I like to have those handy as well. Now, I began painting by painting the bottom part of the tombstone overlay, and the side edges of this will show through onto the back of that tag. So I painted both the front and the back on that. And remember, the bottom has two pieces. There's a smaller piece that attaches to that larger bottom piece. You don't have to paint the back side. I did, but you don't have to paint the back side of that smaller piece if you don't want to. And for the top part of the overlay, I chose this outline piece instead of the solid inside piece that pops out of it. I just kind of liked that outline look. And so they don't have texture paste on them. I just painted them, let them dry. And you can see up in the top corner, I have already done this to the cross overlay portion, but I wanted to show you on this larger tag how I did this. So I am taking and I'm painting the black soot all over the front of the tag with the Crackle paste. And as I'm painting, I'm making sure that the paint is getting down in between all the areas that don't have texture paste and also into the cracks for the Crackle texture paste. I want it to go down in there. Now it's soaking into the tag where there's no texture paste because it's not sealed. And so the paint kind of soaks in. And then what I'm hoping is that that texture piece is going to resist the paint. So you want to do this fairly quickly. You don't want to waste too much time because you don't want it to dry. And then I noticed that on the top, I tried the cleanup cloths and they didn't seem to work well as far as getting the paint off of the texture paste as much as I wanted. So this time I'm going straight in with the water wipes. And these did work better. I still wanted more paint off of the texture part, but these did a great job for the first step of removing paint from that textured area. So as you can see, some of that uh, the pattern from the stencil on the texture paste is starting to show through, and you can see that the texture paste kind of looks a little bit white, and that's okay. It will dry after this step. It will become more translucent again and be a little bit more of the brown color of the tag that is showing through. So I tried not to wipe off too much of the paint in the flat areas, and I also wanted to make sure that I left it in the cracks so that there would be that really antiqued looking crackle finish. So at this point, the fronts and the backs have been painted and they have dried. And now I have a sanding disc on my blending tool. And I'm going through and I'm sanding off some of that paint off of the raised areas. Even though I wiped it off, I wanted more to come off. So I just went through and I sanded the texture paste, and it gave it again an even rougher look to it. And you can see I sanded some of the edges as well. And then once I did that to all the pieces, I went through and I put some frayed burlap distress ink all along the edges, all along the top, and that kind of soaks into those areas that I have sanded the paint off of them. The paint will resist, but the other parts will allow that ink to kind of show through. And so you can see there, they look very distressed, and I really love the way those look. So now I'm attaching the bottom portions, those two bottom pieces. I want to make sure it's nice and flat and even on the bottom there. So I'm going to go ahead and attach both of those. And as you can see, I did sand on the edges of those as well. And once I had it all put together, I went ahead and I cut these because before I put the top on the front, I want to be sure that it is popped up and that there's room for the binder ring to go through that hole in between this tag and the front of the tombstone overlay. So I'm just using my large tonic trimmers, not the haberdashery ones. Those are for either fussy cutting or fabric. But I have glued those pieces onto the top part of my front cover, and they're going to be completely covered up by that tombstone, the cross part that's over in the top left corner. And so now I'm just checking to make sure that I can get that binder ring through there now, that there's enough room. Wanted to make sure that one layer of the etc. pieces would be enough, and it is. So now I'm going to go ahead and add that outline piece that I painted earlier using collage medium. And I'm going to add that to the top of the tombstone. And now I am putting some glue, and you can see that I also went in and painted those extra pieces because you'll see them from the side. So I wanted those to be black as well. And I'm going to attach the tombstone to the top and let it dry. Now while that's drying, I ran off a daily kind of inspiration of things you could do for Halloween. I have this on my blog, so you can follow the link in the description for this video, and I have these suggestions listed there. Lots of different things you can do throughout the month of October um, that you could put in this journal. And sometimes it's journal, you could just journal things, and sometimes it's things with pictures that you can journal about the pictures as well. So I've gone over them with Distress ink in old paper, and now I'm going over them with Distress ink in frayed burlap. And then what I'll be doing is I'm going to spray them with a little bit of water, get some drips on there, kind of make them look old, dry those. And I want to have the tag that I'm going to put those on have a little interest. So I got the Batground Distress layering stencil. And so I put just some black soot distress ink through that all along the edges. You don't have to do it in the center. That's going to be covered up with your lists. But this is tag number 1, the front and the back. And what I didn't think about at the time when I was doing these is that the back should be upside down. Everything on the back of each tag should have been upside down so that when I open it, you can see it and you don't have to flip the book over. And I didn't think about it until I had the whole thing put together and already stamped. So learn from me and take a little time to think through each one a little bit more and make sure that the back is upside down. It'll make it much easier to look through. But anyway, there I have the first part of the list on the front and the second part of the list on the back. And so that's a really simple tag. It doesn't have to be, fancy because that is your inspiration for the rest of the journal. All right, so this next tag, I'm using the Frankenstencil, the one that has 2 parts to it. So this is kind of the grunge part. And on the back of the tag, I'm using the part that is from the stencil called Cracked, but it really looks uh, like a spider web to me, even though it's supposed to be like kind of cracking out from like a hole in something. So on the front where I have the grunge, I am stamping the stamps from that set, and those are the little haunted houses. So there's a haunted house on the gate. I've got the moon up there, and then I'm going to go ahead and stamp a few bats. So I'm taking care of that. I'm stamping in Black Soot Distress Archival ink, and that is a more permanent oil-based ink than the Distress, which is always water reactive. This is a little spider from one of the uh, rubber cling stamp sets, and I will show you that in a minute so that you can see which set that came from. And there it is, a little spider down there in the corner. And then I took this Halloween words layering stencil, and I am using my pixie tape to kind of tape off some of the other words and that hole at the top. And I'm just using black soot to put beware on the back side and or fright on the back side and beware on this front side. So fright and beware are my sentiments on those, and then I set that aside, got out another tag. So I just tried to use one mixed media set per tag for the first part. And then every once in a while I would add in other stamps and things like that from some of the other sets. So this one, I used the zigzag on the top and bottom, and I tried to keep this whole thing pretty monochromatic. So I just used black soot distress ink, frayed burlap, old paper, and just kept it so that any pictures that I put on it or any journaling or anything else like that are going to go. I won't have any clashing going on or anything like that. I won't have to think about what am I wearing. I can put any pictures in it. And once I stenciled, I went ahead and put my ink pad directly onto that stencil. I wet it and then I used it to stamp over the stenciled area. Doing the same thing on the back, and I'm using frayed burlap on both of these to stamp over the stenciling with the stencil. So there are 2 layers on that one of stenciling. And then for this one, I wanted to use this cute little stretching kitty. I think it's just such a great stamp. So we've got a stretching kitty at the bottom. And then up here we have the word eek. And as I was stamping these, I was kind of thinking through the list on the front, and I was thinking, what could I use for some of these? And so I thought, might be fun to do something with, my cats on that page. I don't have kids, so maybe I would put some, fun pictures of my cats, or this one has a pumpkin, and so I could do pumpkin carving or the pumpkin farm or any of that. Now I'm just going through with plain water right now, and then you can see that I'm kind of wiping the water up. I'm trying to take away some of that stenciled color in the background, and then I'm going back in over it with frayed burlap to kind of smooth out the stenciling in the background and make that pumpkin stand out a little more. And again, keeping with the monochrome color. So that's just um, the frayed burlap and the black soot. And then I'm putting some photo mats on so that I can put some photo, and then you can see there's just a little bit of area that you could do a quick little journal. Now this next one I've already done. The next couple I'm going to just show you I've already done with a few of the stamp sets. So this one I used the images from this kind of retro Halloween, and so I used the stencil the same way. So you can see I have stenciled, and then I've done some stamping on it as well. And I've got more of those photo mats. So this one I went back to the Batground, and I love this one. I love the way they look kind of carved. I think that's a really cool look. And so I used the bats again and then the Harlequin on the other side. And for the sentiment, I used these Halloween words and stenciled that on there, ghoulish. And I used both the skull and the little candle for the bottom of this one. So there are just so many things that you could use these for uh, that are on the list. But before I get into that, let me talk about the front. So I used the number 31, the raven. I used the frame and the cameo, many from the stamp set that you can see in the background there. And then I'm showing you again. I just love the way this feels and the way it looks. I just love that cracked color. I was inspired actually by one of the ideology backgrounds from last year, and actually it ended up being in this year's ideology backgrounds for Halloween. So I was inspired by that to make this background on the cover. All right, so I used stamps and I cut those out to make my cover, and I did add a little bit of chunky glitter to the bottom there as well that I had colored in black with black um, alcohol ink. And then I'm just showing you again that I made that top part pop out so there was room for that binder ring so that I could fit all of them in. On the back of the front cover, I stamped one of the ATC components stamps, and I cut a few little tags that could go in there for some of the things like doing your playlist, journaling about something that was on the list. And so that gives you an opportunity to do some journaling about some of the things that might be in here, different Halloween memories, Halloween this or that. Any of those could go on those larger tags that are in the front and back cover. And then some of the things on the list are like visit a haunted house. So that could have been that first page. Something that, you found scary, or costumes, wearing orange, trying a pumpkin spice latte, or something apple, or something pumpkin, um, making a playlist, dancing to a Halloween song, wearing a Halloween t-shirt, getting a manicure, visiting a graveyard, going on a ghost tour. Those are always funny in some of the different towns that we've gone to. We've enjoyed some of those. So, and then always you could either put journaling as a pocket behind some of the photos, or you can um, leave room for journaling. If you didn't really want to journal, if the photos spoke for themselves, you could put two little pictures, like on the last one or that one where I left plenty of room, and this one where there's plenty of room to do a little bit of journaling there under the photos. So you can see just all the different ways that I've used all of those different stamps, the elements from some of the stamp sets. This one is to put a picture of someone you love if you want, or just do some journaling about someone you loved who has passed, and to use this as a time to remember them and cherish their memory. Again, something autumn, so this could be pumpkin spice or something fall that you could put on there. Pictures of trick-or-treating or a costume, going to buy a costume, making a costume, making little treats for someone. I thought this one might be a fun one to do, a picture of you dancing to a Halloween song and then journaling about that. This one you could journal, about a Halloween memory or a favorite costume that you had. Um, or even your favorite candy, something like that. This could be about carving pumpkins, which is always a fun time. This could be maybe some treats that you make to give to colleagues or special kiddos or neighborhood kids or something like that. So these are all just, I try to keep them as general as I could so that you would be able to put anything from our list on there. So I have pictures of each one of these tags will be on my blog so that you can see them and see exactly, you can take your time. I know I'm going through this fairly quickly, but you can take your time looking at them and seeing which stamps I used, so that if you have any of these and you want a little inspiration for how to use them, you can look at my blog for that as well. So I know this was kind of long. I want to thank you so much for following along. As always, if you have any questions, I am happy to answer them to the best of my ability. All of the products that I used today are listed below in the description for today's video, as well as on my blog, where you will see all of the photos for today's project as well, so that you can continue to be inspired. Thank you so much for sticking with me for this long tutorial, and I want to wish you a very creative day.